I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Oh, are there any amendments to the agenda?
Madam President, we do have one amendment. We do not need an executive session this evening.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda? Gary?
I move we approve the agenda with the noted change.
Emma Doherty, second.
Emma seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. We are now to the recognitions and presentations, which begin with Jennifer Bradford Vernon and the Elementary and Secondary Teachers of the Year.
Good evening. Each year, Salina USD 305 is honored to recognize 2 instructors as District Teachers of the Year. The awards are sponsored by the Kansas State Department of Education, affiliated with the National Teacher of the Year program. Semifinalists representing Region 1 will be announced at the Kansas Teacher of the Year Awards Luncheon September 14, and state finalists are named in November. I am pleased to introduce to you our Elementary Teacher of the Year from Sunset Elementary, Kylene Como. Kylene's teaching experience includes Coronado, Osawatomie, and Schilling schools before joining Sunset Elementary as a first grade teacher for 6 years and a third grade teacher for 5. She received her bachelor's in elementary education from Kansas Wesleyan University and her master's in education from Baker University. She joined the Salina Teacher Leadership Academy in 2016, where she received her master's in educational leadership from Kansas State University. I'd like to invite Kylene to the podium.
Thank you for this recognition and the opportunity to represent USD 305's exemplary educators. I am thankful first to my colleagues and administrators for their encouragement, friendship, and the confidence that they have in my teaching. I want to thank the board for their support and tireless efforts to meet the needs of each of our students. As both a previous student, a parent, and a current employee, I have seen the sacrifices and accomplishments that the USD 305 Board of Education has endured. We are a blessed community, and I stand before you full of gratitude. Finally, I want to thank my students, both past and present, for making me the teacher that I am today. They have taught me about humility and compassion and the importance of understanding one another. I have learned to strive each day to be a champion for every one of my students. Several years ago, the school district brought in a guest speaker, Rita Pearson, who touched my heart as she shared her experiences with working with students that came from poverty. The statement that has most resonated with me over the last several years is every child deserves a champion, one who will never give up, one who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can be. The foundation of my own teaching is built on that quote. I am dedicated to being a cheerleader for each of my students and building the relationships with everyone that walks through my door. I believe that the most valuable gift that we can give our students is that relationship and the quality time that we spend with them. As a teacher, my mission is to ignite a love of learning in each of my students, and I strive to make learning engaging and fun and school a place where the students want to be. I work to find the tools that will motivate my students and empower them to eventually advocate for their own individual learning. If students leave my classroom with an ability to regulate themselves and to articulate their own needs, I will know that I have equipped them for future success. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak and to represent USD 305.
Thank you, Kylene. I am pleased to introduce to you our Secondary Teacher of the Year from Salina High School South, Charlie Todd. Charlie received his Bachelor of Science degree from Kansas State University and will complete his Master of Science in Curriculum and Instruction with an emphasis in mathematics education from Kansas State University next summer. He has taught at South High School for 7 years as a mathematics instructor. At this time, I'd like to invite Charlie to the podium.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the recognition and the opportunity, like Kylie said, to represent USD 305 on the state level, or regional level, I should say, and then potentially the state level. So, as you all know, Salina Public Schools is full of so many tremendous educators, hard workers, and very talented in what they do. When I first received the nomination packet for Teacher of the Year, I was I don't know, maybe felt like a little bit of an imposter possibly, because there's just so many great educators. But as I got the nomination packet, I read that it said the purpose of Teacher of the Year was not to, identify the best educator per se, because how do you do that in Salina Public Schools, or even necessarily the most effective, but just to describe one that has the qualities or traits of an effective educator. Many of the qualities that I have developed over time as an educator really have come from my time and are a result of being in this district and working as a teacher. My very first year, it was filled with just, so many teachers that were willing to mentor me and to help me with lesson planning and help me know how to interact with students effectively. Even had teachers willing to take their planned time away to come observe and give me feedback in my teaching. Not to brown nose, I know the Salina South administrators are here, but really the administrators also have been an extreme benefit to my ability as a teacher and the qualities that I have as a teacher, from allowing me to go to, and not just allowing me, but encouraging us to go to so many professional development opportunities. Some of the most memorable were visiting Dan Meyer, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but he had a TED Talk a while ago, and just really innovative math educator. And then also, so we have our KSDE regional math trainings now that our very own math coach, Ms. Peterson, is part of or helps to push. Then finally, the Kansas Association of Mathematics, or Teachers of Mathematics, their conferences have just been phenomenal. And it's, again, they encourage us to go. In fact, they almost force us to go. You're going. But really, they are a really great benefit to us. As I've been working through my master's program, which I'm currently in the process of finishing, like was mentioned, it was just amazing because it really did confirm for me the effectiveness of Salina Public Schools and the things that we push for here. Everything that my colleagues have taught me, my administrators have taught me, the things that we learn in these trainings, they are backed by research. I mean, it's things that we've seen in studies that I've read in my classes. I was going to mention one more thing. I'm very appreciative of the Salina Education Foundation and the Mary and A.J. Anderson Scholarship that has helped me fund my graduate work that I've done with my master's program. And then finally, I just would like to wrap up with another sign that, this is just a phenomenal district to work in. The class that I took this last summer was called School Redesign, and it focused on implementing kind of the Kansas CAN tenets, the basic tenets of what makes an effective school and district. And some of those are personalized learning, project-based learning, and the development of social and emotional skills for our students. And with all the assignments that we had that had us reflect on how our classroom, how our district, how our school has done in implementing these, it was just amazing how, before I even knew that these were the Kansas CAN standards, our district has already been really far and above ahead of all that. USD 305 just does such a great job of equipping teachers, new teachers, to have the qualities needed, to be an effective educator. So I'm very, very grateful to be a teacher here. So thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. And at this time, we have special gifts and recognitions to present to you. We greatly appreciate the support our local businesses give to this program. In the gift bag, you will find a custom-made watch co-sponsored by Jeff Helene Jostens and a gift certificate donated by Martinelli's. The second envelope contains the H.E. and Irma Lee Nuss Teacher of the Year Award. Each of you receives a $500 check in recognition of your efforts on behalf of Salina schools. This is the 28th year for these awards, made possible by the Nuss family. H.E. Nuss was the assistant principal at Central High for 10 years and a Kansas educator for 28 years. Irma Lee Nuss was a librarian at USD 305 for 11 years and a Kansas educator for 37 years. She began her teaching career at age 18 in a one-room schoolhouse. Her son, Lawton Nuss, who is the Chief Justice of the Kansas Supreme Court, continues to honor his parents' legacy with the Nuss Teacher of the Year Award. We greatly appreciate his generosity and support. The Board of Education presented to you an engraved plaque as a memento of your selection as Teachers of the Year. And during the 1920 school year, your pictures will hang in this meeting room and your names have been added to the perpetual plaque on the wall. Congratulations.
Proud of you, congratulations. So appreciative of what you did. Since I'm not an answer, I'm glad he. Congratulations. That's great. They're bound to win.
Thank you, Teachers of the Year.
Let's give him another round of applause.
Let's give them another round of applause. Next on the agenda is Brad Anderson talking about the Salina Arts and Humanities Arts Infusion Program.
Thank you very much for the time. For those of you who've been on for a number of years, you know this routine in usually late August or early September. We are thrilled to enter, as I was listening to these teachers talk, I thought about my time at South High and then my time back with the school system more than 35 years ago that I did one of my first arts infusion classes. And over the years, this program of arts infusion, of integrating artists, both local teaching artists and visiting artists into the classroom has, I think, been transformational and helped distinguish the excellence that these award winners just talked about. What Salina does in this partnership with USD 305 is phenomenal and serves as an example, not just for the citizens here, but across the state and nation as an example of unique partnerships. You have a copy of this year's infusion guide that is hot off the presses and that Anna Pauscher, who is our arts education coordinator. She is in Lawrence today working on some of this with a partnership I'll talk about here briefly. But this guide, she distributed about 800 copies of those to the employees of the district last week. We have another 400 that are used throughout the year as an economic development tool to help with business recruiting, executive recruiting, physician recruiting, and to connect with the business community, letting them know what's happening in arts and arts education across our community, both in this partnership with the school district that serves as an excellent example for those who are looking to move their families here, but also to some of the other cultural enrichment that's available. So front part of the book includes Lynn's introduction, which is kind of nice to give teachers permission to use this. When the boss encourages you to take part, then that has an incredible power. And then with feedback from teachers, we're in continual assessment, whether it's the River Festival or Arts Infusion or other things. We're continually reflecting. We had a consultant come in last spring and spend about 4 days with us drilling down on what was working, what wasn't working, what the perceptions were, both from the teaching artists and from educators, and giving some professional advice to the program, some of which you'll see here. So this year, we're going to be, we did a teaching artist overview that gives a quick reference guide on page 7 to teachers to be able to use a little more effectively in their planning and decision-making of what might fit with them. We're highlighting in a simple way a quick picture of the visiting artists who come from outside the community and when they're going to be engaging. And then a couple of years ago, from teacher feedback, we began breaking this up into subject matter content instead of artistic content. Makes it great for the arts agency to organize things by arts, but if you're a teacher and you're working in a particular discipline, sometimes it's helpful to look for the content and the arts connections in those disciplines. So that's how you'll see that this is organized. After the English and language arts section, that reference to the other community partners, if I meet with the cultural directors and education directors from about 12 different agencies in town who offer some kind of education, either continuing or for youth and children, from the Salina Public Library to the Rolling Hills Zoo to Community Theater and the Arts Center. And they are all represented in here as well to kind of give a broader-based list of resources. So if teachers or community members are looking for ways to engage and learn more about arts and arts integration, they can do that. And then we also highlight the programs that are offered through Salina Arts and Humanities. In addition to the partnership that you provide through your funding, along with the city funding that goes in, we are only one of 2 city departments of arts and culture in the state of Kansas. Wichita has one of us, and Salina. But to have those partnerships and those programs and those opportunities does help distinguish and make Salina both attractive and engaged. And then finally, as a teacher's resource, we put the public art in Salina. As you all, those who've been here for a while, know that public art hasn't always had, people don't always smile when they talk about public art. We've made a concerted effort through education, through community awareness of what these pieces mean, what they're about, how to engage, and how to be involved. And so both through the schools and that next generation of future leaders, as well as community members that receive these copies in waiting rooms and doctor's offices and other places, it's a way of helping improve that communication. Finally, I mentioned Anna was in Lawrence. We have the benefit, and especially through, prior to Lynn's full-time appointment here, she was very helpful to help us bridge and make a connection with University of Kansas, the Spencer Museum. They received 2 years ago a $400,000 2-year grant to help with a research and implementation project of arts integration, of taking their collection, and specifically the Asian art collection, and building bridges and connections with elementary and secondary schools in Kansas. But Salina is the test market for that. So teachers from your district have been participating over the last year in an advisory group and trips to Lawrence to help develop that curriculum, to develop those tools and those pieces that are featured in here as part of this year's implementation. If that works, we believe that there'll be some other future benefits that grow from what we learn with that, including exhibits at the Arts Center that might feature some of the Spencer's collection, and then field trips and/or conversations that take place in the classroom about the work, and then they can go right across town and see those very pieces. And so that is an exciting opportunity. It's a new thing, and once again, Salina will be leading that effort in partnership with the Spencer in new ways of delivering education and helping implement some of those standards in Kansas can. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share this with you and for your support of what I think is one of the most valuable programs we have. So
Thank you, Brad.
thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Any questions for Brad? Comments? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda items, and these include the minutes of the August 13th, 2019 regular meeting, the personnel report, the treasurer's report, the investment report, journal entries, and approval of encumbrance listings, which include to Eagle Communication in the amount of $21,322 for the purchase of VMware software, and to Dell in the amount of $28,428 for the purchase of Chromebooks and licenses. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Nedra, second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the consent agenda items, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the public forum. Do we have anyone here who would like to present? Seeing none, we will go on to the action agenda, which starts with which is entirely involved with the Central High Journalism out-of-state field trip. So J.D. Garber. And Madeline Perde.
Well, I guess you could have come up. All right. Hello, everyone. Just trying to get the journalism group back for their 4th convention in Washington, D.C. this year, which is November 20th through the 24th. This time, we're going to take a little bit bigger group. We have 11 students and 2 sponsors. One of the exciting things that is happening this year is one of our leaders and outstanding editors, Madeline Perde, is going to present at the convention if we get this approved. So that's an exciting thing for us because as far as I know, we've never done that. But just something we're looking forward to. So do you have any questions?
It sounds like a great trip.
Yes.
Madam President, I move approval of the Central High Journalism trip to Washington, D.C. on November 21st through the 24th of this year as presented.
Do I hear a second? Nedra?
Second?
Any more discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Do a good job.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for all you do, and best to Madeline. Our discussion agenda includes the Kansas Education System Accreditation, KESA, and that's with Tiffany Snyder.
You will find a copy of this presentation on your desktop for your convenience.
All right, good evening. As you may remember, KESA is the accreditation model that the state of Kansas has asked us to follow in a 5-year cycle. And as you recall, last spring we finished up year 2 with a very successful outside visitation team visit. And so this year, we will be going into year 3. And as we do that, I want to ensure that you are all aware of the expectations for year 3, but also that you have knowledge of what's happening in our buildings, at each of our buildings that we have in the district,
that we discuss and I share building progress toward the action plans that the schools have written in their leadership teams and with their staff, as well as share strategies and data that demonstrate areas of strength and areas that they need to grow in. A little bit of background of what is expected for year 3 is that at this point, all action plans should be fully implemented. However, if there are some changes that need to be made to our plans, this is the year that we can make those changes. And so we'll continue looking at our action plans, making decisions to see if we're on the right track and meeting our goals and our performance indicators. And we'll continue to collect artifacts and the evidence that support the indicators that the schools have set forth. One of the big pieces in year 3 is the mid-implementation cycle review. And what that looks like, there are a series of questions and then a narrative that needs to be written. The building leadership team will work on that, as well as the district leadership team. And they'll determine if any adjustments need to be made to the goals that had been written in year 1. And if we did make any modifications to those goals, what were the reasons why? And then what was the data behind it that really made us think and analyze and make some of those modifications or edits to our goals? So those are some of the big pieces of year 3 in KISA. And then we need to be presenting information to you from the outside visitation team that we will have come again in the spring. They will write another summary. So we will report that back to you, as well as the information that we receive from the mid-cycle review that we do. So those are kind of the big ideas for year 3.
May I
for
just
you to
ask
expect.
you what
Yeah.
you mean by artifacts? It's not like pot shards. and-
Artifact, it could be any pieces of, the evidence that they're turning in for meeting their performance indicators. For example, if when they work in their PLCs, or if they meet in a building leadership team, the notes and what they accomplished during those meetings could be turned in as evidence that they are working towards that building level indicator.
Thank you.
Okay, so in order to provide you with information about what's happening at the building level, I will be inviting building level reps each month to share with you what their building performance indicator is, some data that is aligned to that performance indicator. They will share with you the strengths, celebrations that are happening in the building, as well as areas that they see that they still need to grow in. And then how are they addressing those needs? What are the academic strategies that they're using to address the needs, and also the social emotional strategies? And so I'm hopeful that by them coming each month to share the happenings in their building, you'll feel like you'll have a pulse on what's happening across the district in each of our buildings. Because it's really important throughout the KISA process that we are continuously communicating to our stakeholders about what is happening. And so like I said, I'm really hopeful that this will help you understand not just what's happening at the district level, but at each individual level, and how it's aligned to what we're doing here at the district with our goals. Questions?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
We are,
good.
yes.
okay.
Thank you. So
Yes.
you are also presenting the next
I am
item,
up next.
the student performance updates.
All right. Okay. The vision set for the state of Kansas is that the students in Kansas will lead the world in success. And so in order to do that, we are to be sharing results that are aligned to the 5 big results, or the 5 big areas that the state have set forth that we need to be monitoring. And so those would be like the social emotional goal, kindergarten readiness, post-secondary, graduation rate, and individual plans of study, or IPS. And so what I would like to do, in order for you to really have a good idea about where we are in the district as far as meeting each of the goals that are designated from the state, is to share with you data sets each month. And as you can see on the screen, I have broken down tentatively, as long as the data comes back in a reasonable amount of time, when I would like to present to you this information. And so if we look at the first few data sets, we have ASQ, RDA, and BAS in September. That really will lead the conversation with kindergarten readiness. And so that will tell us what the ASQ is the screener that was given on the first day of school, first and second day of school to our kindergartners. So it's going to tell us what students know when they come in. And then, of course, the RDA and BAS is given in December and then again in the spring to our kindergartners, so we can track to see the progress that they're making throughout the year. And so we'll kind of get a baseline data on where we're at with kindergarten readiness. And then the next several months in the fall, we'll move to some of the post-secondary success. And so when we look at post-secondary, we'll look at the post-secondary effective rate. We'll look at our math, which is given to our first and second graders. We'll take a look at data from ACT Aspire, the interim, ACT and ACT work keys, which is an optional assessment that is paid for by the state that is given to our juniors. But we'll also look at our ACT information that we have from our 12th graders as well. And AP enrollment and AP assessment. So those assessments there, and the Kansas assessment will come later because we don't get that information until the accountability until July. Those data sets will really tell us, are we on the right track for post-secondary success? Are we meeting the academic needs of our students? And so that addresses the post-secondary success goal from the state. Graduation rate, of course, will give us information about the graduation rate and if we're meeting, if we're making progress towards that goal. And it also kind of leads the way into the individual plans of study. It'll speak towards that. Are we helping students navigate through high school and to be successful through the individual plans of study that we have set up in our schools? And so that will give us some information as well on the graduation rate and IPS. Then if we move down here to the spring, chronic absenteeism, are we giving students what they need in school? Do they want to be in school with us? So we'll look at some data there, as well as the non-academic reporting that now occurs K-12 and discipline referral. And those data sets will speak to our social emotional goals at the district level and at the state to see if we're making progress. And then the ACT Aspire, we'll look at that again because we do give it 2 times a year in the fall and in the spring, as well as the MAP and Kansas assessment. And again, those two really feed into that post-secondary goal. And so that will give you an idea as far as where we are as a district and the progress we're making towards the 5 big ideas that the state has asked us to really monitor, as well as the 3 goal areas that we have set as a district. And just to remind you of what those are, it is kindergarten readiness, post-secondary, and social emotional. And so those data pieces will speak to that as well. And so you will get to see me a lot this year up here.
All right.
I don't know if that's good or not, but
Yeah, it'll be good.
do you have any questions about the data that will be shared?
Yeah, I do. Because we often get an alphabet soup, would you give us the names of those programs? For example, ASQ, RDA, BAS.
Yeah. Okay, so ASQ is actually ASQ, and there are 2 different kinds that we give. We give an ASQ 3, which is an academic, the academic piece, and then we also ask parents to fill out a screener on the ASQ SE, which is the social emotional piece, and that screener is just on the social emotional.
So you're
The
saying that ASQ doesn't really stand for
It
things?
does. It stands for Ages and Stages Questionnaire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That
Yes.
escaped my mind. RDA is a reading diagnostic assessment. And BAS is a balance assessment system.
Just for clarity, the RDA, that reading diagnostic assessment, includes a section on sounds so that we know whether or not students know whether they can hear the sounds in words, because that's a strong prerequisite to the ability to read. And it also includes a phonics assessment. So the RDA really is two different assessments kind of blended into one.
And as I'm preparing these each month, sometimes when this is what I do all the time, I forget. And so I will make sure and give some explanation of what each of those are and what students are assessed on and why we feel that they are important to give as I present each month.
And in April, what is non-academic reporting?
That would be on, it's a social emotional piece where teachers are reporting on how students are, working in class. For example, are they respectful to their peers? Are they, do they ask to leave class if they feel need to leave class?
Do you have
Are they
particular,
respectful? I'm trying to think.
particular topics within each group that every teacher then deals with? So it's not just random, oh, this child, da-da-da-da-da,
Right.
it's not just off the top of the teacher's head.
And this was just redone at the second, actually K-12, was it in the spring or in May, I think, when staff got together and did some rewriting of the non-academic reporting to align with the national social emotional targets. And Shanna, if you want to add anything to that, feel free to.
What the non-academic, they've been done for years with elementary, and last year our middle schools and high schools developed kind of their own version of that based upon the elementary. And then this year in May, we got together with representatives from each of the different areas, and we looked at how can we line up the non-academics to some of the social emotional standards we were looking at within the counselor and the social worker and the curriculum that they had. So the second step that you saw with the elementary, the CASEL standards are actually what those are based on. And so what you're going to see then is with the new non-academic reporting, it's going to be based upon those 5 CASEL standards that are the social emotional standards that we're looking at. And so we're starting to develop resources that go along with that. We've had them for several years at elementary with second step, and now at the middle school, we've just purchased the second step for them. So there will be some very targeted lessons at elementary and middle. And then there is not a second step high school, but what the high schools are doing is working with their advisory groups, and they're developing those with their teachers based upon social emotional standards that are appropriate for the high school level.
Thank you, Shanna.
Thank you. Any other?
I think I may be off. In our world, I think we call those soft skills.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And is KELPA given to all students or students at what levels, please?
KELPA is given to K through 12 if they meet the criteria for the English language scale. So they
Develop that a little bit, will you, please?
As far as when students enroll, parents, mark if their home language is English or Spanish, and then if they mark that the primary language spoken at home is Spanish, then they are automatically tested in the program. It doesn't mean that if parents opt out and don't want us to provide services, we don't have to, but we still have to test them. And they also have to take the state assessment for the English language proficiency to see what level they are with their English language. Parents can opt out of that. We really tried, it is required, but they do have a say if they want their child to not take the assessment. And we have about 1 in the district, K-12, that don't allow their child to take it.
So we deal only with Spanish, not with any other languages in this? Right?
Not like Laotian or
Yeah.
There is-
Chinese?
Hindustani.
Yeah,
no.
right.
Right,
Okay.
right, and I had to think twice because I'm getting confused. We also give the seal of biliteracy as an option, and that one has some other languages, but For the KELPA, that is just the English.
Just English, Spanish.
Okay, anyone else? Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing you again. Many times.
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the school board reports and upcoming dates of importance, which include Tuesday, September 10th, the Salina Education Foundation Fall Breakfast at the Salina Country Club, 7 a.m. Saturday, September 14th, the Teacher of the Year Luncheon at the Hilton Garden Inn at noon. And Tuesday, October 1st, the KASB Fall Regional Meeting in McPherson at 5:30. Let's start with Emma down there.
Okay, I just have one report, and I attended the Smoke Hill Education Center board meeting last night. They were very receptive and very nice, and there'll be upcoming 2 big workshops that'll be held at Webster Center, and it'll be regarding, one of them will be regarding security and safety, and it'll be a combined speaker parent that'll be coming here to speak. And then also, they were very busy orientating new employees, so anyway, it was a very nice evening.
Thank you. Carol.
Yes, the Central Kansas Cooperative in Education met on August 21st. All of the member district superintendents were there, which, as Gabe commented just before the meeting, that's a little bit unusual that we're complete attendance. But because we turned, as we often do in that meeting, to elements of funding and budgeting and that sort of thing, I thought maybe it would be important for us to look again at some key information about special ed funding. And Mike, if I get off track with any of this, please let me know. But back in 1995, when the federal government first established the Individuals with Disability Education Act, it's called IDEA, it was determined that special education students should be provided with a free and appropriate public education. Their parents didn't have to pay for it, that a public education should be for everyone. And it was calculated at that time that educating a special needs student would require an average of 50% more than educating a child without. So the federal government promised that it would pay 40% of those excess costs, leaving the states and local entities to pay the other 60% of the excess costs. The National Education Association reported that this last year, the federal government paid 14% rather than 40%. Kansas law requires the state to cover 92% of each school district's special education costs that are not met either by the federal allocations or base state aid. Last year, the state paid 78%, even though it's required by its own dictate to cover 92%. So what that means is that because the state and the federal government do not pay the amount that they are supposed to be paying, individual districts pick up the rest. And I thought this was an interesting statistic. The 2019-2020 assessment for Salina is $4.6 million, which is an increase of approximately $2.25 million over the past 10 years. Now that, I think, is fascinating. So the point is, I think that one of the things that we need to do is to urge state and federal legislators to pay the share that they say they are going to pay. And I'm wondering if maybe Salina can't take a bit of leadership there, somehow coming up with a campaign, if you will, to organize letter writing, and maybe to sponsor that through our co-op district, if we could get other boards of education into that as well. There's lots of information out on the internet about this whole funding issue. There is this Thursday a KASB workshop at the Hilton Garden Inn that's going to talk about IDEA in the morning. We'll hear a lot about that. And then in the afternoon, some special education issues. And I'm just wondering if maybe out of that, we might be able to come up with something that will help push this narrative forward, because we really need to do something. It creates pressures for us as a Board of Education to have to keep funding and funding and funding when money has been so tight. And it's an issue for the cooperative attempting to function appropriately to meet the needs of kids. So just a thought, maybe we can begin to think about taking some action instead of just going, oh gee, isn't this so sad that it's not happening? Let's do something. Just a thought.
Thank you, Carol. Gabe?
Unfortunately, I was out of town for both of last Wednesday's meetings, the CKCAE Board of Control and Parks Advisory Board. I did attend the week prior NEA Salina Executive Team meeting with Mrs. Exline and the whole NEA Salina Executive Team. That was a productive, speedy meeting as we all kind of got introduced, and all 5 of us in the room were new to our roles. So I think that will be a good group and good discussion this coming school year. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Nedra?
I attended the Salina Education Foundation full board meeting, and we met at South Middle School and had a little tour of the garden out there, since that's one of the things SEF has sponsored, and they're planning on expanding. We met the new board members and said goodbye to old board members, and have our plates full, beginning with the breakfast. I hope to see all of you there for that.
Thank you. Jim?
No report.
Okay. Gary?
I, along with Nedra, attended the Education Foundation meeting at South Middle. The new trustees are Tom Loudis, Tim Blake, and Michelle Pack. It's always nice when we think about outstanding people in the community and ask them and they say yes. That's a really neat feeling, and to know that that's a well thought of organization associated with USD 305. I'm sure they're going to do great things with us. I also took the tour of the garden. That was very interesting, and we got to eat some cucumbers and pickles and carrots and things that were grown in the garden with our lunch. I also went to the Salina Parks and Recreation Advisory Group. That's the first meeting I'd attended with them. They had a lot of information, but I didn't think any of it was particularly a crossover for us, so I'm not going to go into details about how many rounds of golf we played and that sort of thing. Carol, I know that disappoints you.
It does indeed, but I was thinking about the tennis issue. Has that come up?
Not at this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, people are talking.
Yeah.
And I will also tell you that I sat in on Matt Gary's guitar class. Since the Education Foundation was the initiation of that class, I thought, okay, I'm at South Middle. I'll sit in on Matt's class, and I know Matt pretty well. So he said, Gary, why don't you grab a guitar and go sit in the back of the class? Now, I'm no Ann Zimmerman, but I've played guitar since like 1968. And this very nice little 7th grade boy I'm sitting with in this guitar class says, hey, if you get lost, just ask me, I'll help you. What a neat kid. Anyway, great class. It's a fun class to sit in if you ever get a chance and want to sit in a very lively class.
Thank you. Well, I attended what's become an annual event where I teach parliamentary procedure to the Heartland Early Education Policy Council, and we make trail mix by parliamentary procedure. So for every item that goes into the trail mix, we have to have a motion and a second and a vote and a particular amount. And they were very big on M&Ms this year. But they did not reject all of the raisins, which they have done in past years. So I thought that was a positive thing. I also attended the Equity Council meeting, and we're just kind of getting going. We spent a lot of time on revisions to the bylaws. So I think Lynn had many things more that we could have done had we not spent so much time on the bylaws. But bylaws are important. So I'm looking forward to the next one, because we've all got the assignment to take the Harvard, what's it called?
Implicit bias.
Implicit bias test that are online. So we all could take it if we want to, but we have to if we're on the Equity Council. So I've heard a lot about it, and I've never taken it, and it would be, I think it's very revealing.
Can I just Google that?
Yes, implicit bias. I think that's the name of the website.
If you will Google implicit bias Harvard, and then there will be a link that says take a test. Fascinating, multiple tests that you can take.
That's all. So Lynn, we have a superintendent's report now.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have had the opportunity over the last couple days to go out and walk with multiple students in the marathon. I got a really cute necklace from one of them that was a little homemade necklace, and so I'm just really enjoying my time face-to-face with kids, and so that's been a celebration. A lot of work goes into making those marathons happen, and our staff just needs to know that does not go unnoticed, because that really is a fabulous time to promote health and wellness, and is such a positive time with families and parents, and it's fun to be part of. I also had the chance to do a Salina Media Connection spot, and so Jennifer set that up, and we are going to try to do several of those throughout the year. So I'm not sure when that will air, but we will get to you when that will air, and that was fun to do. I did want to point out that both Teachers of the Year tonight are products of Salina schools. And I think that is just, I noticed that, and I wrote that down as they were talking this evening, that they had both been born and raised and graduated from our schools. And so I think that's a real celebration and shows the quality of the education that we provide. I was invited to go to the Central High School Pep Assembly at that they had for the beginning of the year. They did the alma mater. They had our pictures up from when we graduated, and lots of laughter as some of those senior pics came up. And there was a video that they'd done of previous graduates, and so that was really fun to see, just that focus on what happens once you leave high school. I know South has done a similar focus via their website, and so we really are trying to focus on that post-secondary preparation and what can life hold for you. And so a neat way for me to be involved this week was to be able to be part of that PEP assembly. Tomorrow, I am going to a Department of Homeland Security active shooter preparedness training. Mrs. Rector and I are going to go to that together, knowing that safety and security is always at the top of our minds, and making sure that our kids are well cared for when they are in our care. And so that is something that we will be taking advantage of tomorrow. So, and that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. I believe we are completed with the agenda. So I will, shall I just declare us adjourned? Is that what I can do?
That's indeed what you
Okay,
can
we are adjourned. Thank you for
We give you
coming.
that power. Thank you. This is a record breaker, isn't it?
Yeah.
7 p.m.
It was a short one. Suck dinners.
Goodness.
I haven't done, any of your signing. Sure, that's, okay, thank you.
Okay, well, we'll head to short and good to Democratic meeting now. Oh, okay, all righty, thank you, well, sure. Might as well.
September.
Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, yeah, there's two meetings before
Take care of a step under this. Have a good one, have a good weekend.
Yes.